Hi, I'm Kaylee, and today I'm doing the Victorian Literature Tag. I don't know who created this tag, but I saw Megan over at Megan Hannett's channel. I saw her do this tag, and I thought, well, yes, I need to do this one. I will link her video down below so you can check that out if you want to see it. I am, of course, a huge fan of classics and Victorian literature in particular. The Victorian era was from Queen Victoria's reign in England from 1837 to her death in 1901. And I feel like it was definitely a golden age for literature. So I am excited to do this tag and show you some of my favorite, classic Victorian literature. Yes. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you know that Books for MKs is a charity that donates books to missionary kids. Today's MK shout out goes to Jacob, who is 13 years old and lives with his family in Guatemala. He loves to read mystery and adventure. If you want to donate to the Books for MKs and donate to Jacob and children like him, you can do so at GoFundMe.com. Don't forget to subscribe and give this video a big thumbs up and click on that little notification bell. All right, I have my paper with all of the questions, and let's get started with this tag. Number one is the first piece of Victorian literature that you ever read. I want to say that it was probably Jane Eyre. I think I was 14 or 15. But before that, I had read a lot of classics that are, simplified for children. So probably if you count those abridged for children, simplified versions, probably the first piece of classic, Victorian literature that I read was Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Number two is your favorite Victorian novel. Why do tags have questions like this? Like I can choose a favorite. It's like saying, which child is your favorite child? or which parent is your favorite parent? I did do a video of my 5 favorite classics. I'm not sure if all of those were Victorian. Probably a lot of them were. Definitely Jane Eyre is a favorite. The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. The Count of Monte Cristo is a forever favorite by Alexander Dumas. My favorite Dickens is David Copperfield. My favorite from Elizabeth Gaskell is North and South. I have lots of favorites. They're all my favorites. And number 3 is just another awful question. Your favorite Victorian author? I can't choose a favorite, obviously. Okay, Rudyard Kipling, I do love his books. Sir Walter Scott, amazing. Louisa May Alcott, although I'm not sure if all of her books are from the Victorian era, but I know at least a couple of her books are. Anthony Trollope is fast becoming a favorite. Obviously the Brontes, of course, are always a favorite. Elizabeth Gaskell, Charles Dickens, Wilkie Collins, Alexander Dumas. Sherlock Holmes, so Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He's right up there, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Question number 4 is your favorite Victorian literary couple. This one is actually an easy one for me. It is Margaret Hale and John Thornton from Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South. I've always said John Thornton is my soulmate. I love their romance in North and South. It's one of these hate to love romances, and they're both such intelligent people, and that really shows in the way that they fall in love. And I just think, it's so wonderful. They're my favorite couple. Number 5 is your favorite Victorian villain. This is another one that's actually an easy one to answer. It is always Uriah Heep from David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. Out of all the Dickens villains, and if you've read any Dickens, Dickens is a mastermind at making these really awful villains that just gross you out, and they're so evil and just nasty, and you just hate them. He really is a genius at writing the bad guys and making you hate them. But Uriah Heep is just so slimy. He's evil. He's so evil, but he pretends to be good. And I think that's what really grosses me out about Uriah Heep. Also, his name is Uriah. What a nasty name. Your favorite Victorian novel where someone dies of consumption. It seems like someone is always dying of consumption, which of course was the old name for tuberculosis. Probably my favorite and one of the most touching and just so much grief over the death of this character is, again, Charles Dickens' Dombey and Son. And there is a child who dies of consumption, and I don't want to spoil it or anything, but it is so sweet and touching and just so sad. And Dickens, again, is known for writing really touching death scenes and, very sad character deaths where you as the reader are just grieving over this character. Plus, Dombey and Son is just a wonderful book anyway, with a lot of really interesting plot devices and everything. Number 7 is the longest Victorian book you have read. That is definitely The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. It is 1,267 pages. It is a big honker of a book. But somehow this book doesn't really seem that long because it's just so action-packed and it moves the story forward so quickly. There's so much going on and it really captures your attention. Number 8 is a Victorian author that you feel is underrated. I actually have a couple for this. I've recently been reading novels from Captain Frederick Marryat, who was actually a sea captain in Victorian times, and he wrote these wonderful high seas adventures. And I don't really hear anybody talk about his works very often. His novels are fantastic and just so full of fun and action and mystery and intrigue, and I could just gush on and on about Frederick Marryat. The other one, the second underrated author that I think I want to mention is Lew Wallace, who is known, of course, for writing the famous Ben-Hur. It seems like when people talk about Ben-Hur, they talk about the movie and they talk about the chariot race, but I don't really hear very many people say that they've read the book. And there's so much more in the book, obviously, than there is in the movie, as with most movies. And I feel like this is an underrated author. People just don't appreciate the genius of the writing. Actually, hang on, I just thought of another underrated author, Marie Corelli. She wrote Thelma, and that's the only book that I've read of hers so far, and I really want to read more. But I don't hear anybody ever talk about Marie Corelli, and she's a wonderful author. I mean, when I read Thelma, I was sucked into that story, and it's very dramatic, and you really just get immersed in the Victorian world. So yeah, I don't know why more people don't know about Marie Corelli. Okay, that's all I have for underrated authors, I promise. The next question is the most beautiful edition of a Victorian book that you have. This is hard because a lot of the beautiful editions that I have that I was looking at, maybe those aren't Victorian authors. And I don't know. It's hard to say like which one is the most beautiful. I can show you one of the ones that I like the most is this edition of Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. And the reason I like it is because she's playing the piano. And of course I'm a pianist. And so, I'm biased that way. I have a definite prejudice for the piano. So I know that this is one of my favorites. It's just a paperback. It's just a big floppy paperback. So I guess maybe it's not like super special beautiful, but I like it. The next question is 3 unread Victorian books that you want to try. It seems like I've heard a lot of people lately talk about Olive by Dinah Maria Mulock Craik. Okay, I'm sure I said that wrong. Katie over at Books and Things has been talking about it, and I've heard several other booktubers talk about it lately because the main character has a disability, and so apparently it's a very interesting look at the Victorians' attitude toward people with disability. So it sounds really interesting, and I really want to read it. Another one that I want to read is The Romance of Two Worlds by Marie Corelli, because I do want to read more books from her. And I still need to read Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. I know, it's ridiculous. I'm a huge fan of Charlotte Bronte. How is it that I've gone my whole life and I still haven't read Shirley? So I finally just need to sit down and read that one, and then my Bronte collection will be complete. And those are all the questions from the Victorian Literature Tag. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know what is your favorite Victorian author, favorite book, favorite, I don't know, everything. And what are some Victorian books that you are trying to read now? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.